The lights on Valanthos station flickered again. Ambassador Yethal watched them with tired eyes. Her scales, once bright blue and shining, had turned dull gray from weeks of stress and little sleep. She stood in the command center, surrounded by broken screens and exhausted officers. Outside the thick windows, 17 enemy warships hung in the darkness like patient predators. The Dominion had come 3 weeks ago. They wanted the refugees. 400,000 souls from a dozen different species had fled to this old station at the edge of known space. They came running from the Dominion's war, from burning worlds and dead families. They thought they would be safe here. They were wrong. Fleet Commander Korax of the Dominion had given them 6 hours. Surrender the refugees for processing, he said. Everyone knew what that word meant. It meant death camps. It meant slavery. It meant horrors that Yethal could not think about without feeling sick. She turned away from the window and looked at her team. A Morvani engineer with 4 arms was trying to fix the communications array. A Silthene pilot sat in the corner, sharpening a blade he would never get to use. They all knew the truth. No help was coming. Yethal had sent messages to every council member world. She had begged and pleaded, and called in every favor she had earned in 40 years of diplomatic service. The responses came slowly, each one breaking her heart a little more. The Morvani Federation expressed deep concern but could not spare any ships. The Silthene Collective chose to remain neutral. The Kethari homeworld, her own people, sent their thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. Those words would not stop Dominion weapons. She walked to her private office, a small room with a single desk and a window that looked out at the stars. She had spent her whole life believing in the galactic community. She had believed that civilization meant something, that the strong would protect the weak, that treaties and accords actually mattered. Now she knew the truth. When the moment came, when real sacrifice was needed, everyone looked away. Everyone found reasons why they could not help. The great powers of the galaxy would watch 400,000 innocent beings die, and they would write sad reports about it, and then they would move on. A knock at her door pulled her from dark thoughts. Ambassador? A young voice. Trill, the communications officer. She was barely out of training. A small creature with large eyes and feathers instead of hair. Too young to die in a place like this. Come in, Yethal said. Trill entered, holding a datapad with shaking hands. I found something. In the old database. I do not know if it matters, but I found something. Show me. Trill placed the pad on the desk. On the screen was an emergency frequency, buried deep in files that no one had touched for 30 years. The label was simple. Terran contingency. Yethal felt her heart skip. Terran. Human. She had almost forgotten about them. The humans had been part of galactic society once, long ago. They were strange creatures, soft and weak-looking, from a harsh world that should have killed them. They had risen anyway. They had built ships and joined the stars and tried to make friends with everyone they met. Then came the Proxima Massacre. Yethal remembered hearing about it when she was young. A human colony attacked by raiders. Millions of humans dying. The humans had begged the Council for help. They had sent desperate messages to every ally they thought they had. No one came. When it was over, when the humans had fought alone and bled alone and buried their dead alone, they simply stopped talking to the galaxy. They pulled back to their own space. They went quiet. Some people said they had fallen apart. Others said they were building something. Most people just forgot about them entirely. This frequency, Trill said. It was set up before they left. An emergency contact. I do not think anyone has ever used it. Because everyone forgot they exist, Yethal said softly. Should I try? Should I send a message? Yethal looked at the young officer. What was the point? The humans had every reason to hate the galaxy. The galaxy had abandoned them just like it was abandoning Valanthos Station. Why would they help strangers when no one had helped them? But Trill was looking at her with those big eyes full of desperate hope, and Yethal realized that hope was all they had left. Send it, she said. Send everything. Our location, our situation, the number of refugees. Send it all. Trill nodded and ran back to her station. Yethal followed slowly, watching as the young officer worked the controls. The message was simple. We are under attack. We have 400,000 refugees. No one is coming to help us. Please, anyone, please. The signal went out into the void. It traveled at the speed of light toward a region of space that the galaxy had ignored for 3 decades. It was a message in a bottle thrown into an endless ocean. Yethal watched it go and felt nothing. In the refugee sections of the station, people were preparing to die. Morvani mothers held their children and told them stories about better times. Kethari elders painted sacred symbols on the walls, prayers for safe passage to the next life. A group of Silthine merchants counted their remaining ammunition, knowing it would never be enough. In a cargo bay on level 7, a scarred mercenary named Vorik organized the only defense they had. He was Silthine, tall and covered in battle marks. His contract had ended 2 months ago, and he had been stuck on the station ever since. Now he was going to die here. He did not mind dying. He had expected to die in battle for years. What he minded was dying for nothing. He minded that the galaxy had turned its back on these people. He minded that children would be taken to Dominion processing camps because no one cared enough to stop it. Mining lasers here. He ordered his small team of volunteers. Cargo drones there. When they board, we make them pay for every step. It would not matter. He knew that. But doing nothing was not an option. Some fights you fought because losing them standing up was better than surviving on your knees. Back in the command center, Yethal recorded a final message. Not a plea for help this time. A record. A testimony. She spoke directly to the council, to the great powers who had done nothing. When you receive this, we will likely be dead or worse, she said, her voice steady. I want you to know that I spent my life believing in everything you claim to stand for. Peace, justice, the protection of innocent life. I was a fool. You have proven that these are just words. You speak of civilization while you let monsters drag children to their deaths. History will remember what you chose. History will remember that you did nothing. She saved the file and sat back in her chair. 5 hours left on the Dominion's clock. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, a small signal continued its journey. It passed through empty space where no one had traveled in decades. It moved toward a silence that the galaxy had mistaken for absence. But silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes silence is patience. Sometimes silence is preparation. Sometimes silence is the deep breath before the storm. And in that silence, something was listening. Fleet Commander Korax sat in his command chair and watched the station through the viewport. He was a patient creature, covered in dark armor that had grown from his own body. His species, the Dominion, believed that the universe belonged to the strong. The weak existed only to serve. It was simple. It was natural. It was the way things had always been. He had given the refugees 6 hours. Now only 20 minutes remained. He was certain they would surrender. Every species in the galaxy was the same when you pressed them hard enough. They talked about honor and principles, but in the end, they always chose survival. They always gave in. His second officer approached. Commander, they have not responded to our last transmission. Korax made a sound that passed for a laugh among his people. They are hoping for a miracle. They sent distress calls to half the galaxy. No one is coming. How can you be sure? Because no one ever comes. Korax turned to face his officer. I have studied the other species for many years. They form councils and sign treaties and make promises. But when the moment comes, when they must actually sacrifice something, they find reasons to stay home. It is their greatest weakness. They care only about themselves. He looked back at the station. Give them 10 more minutes. Then prepare the boarding parties. I want the processing to begin before the end of the day. On Valanthos Station, the countdown felt like a weight pressing down on everyone. Ambassador Yethal stood in the command center, watching the clock tick away the final minutes of hope. Around her, officers worked at their stations, pretending to be busy. There was nothing left to do. They all knew it. In the refugee sections, parents held their children close. Some families had gathered in the chapel, praying to gods from a dozen different worlds. Others simply sat together in silence, taking comfort in each other's presence before the end. Vorek the mercenary made his final rounds of the cargo bay defenses. He had 30 volunteers, armed with mining equipment and cargo handling tools. Against Dominion soldiers with real weapons, they would last maybe 5 minutes, maybe less. A young Morvani boy followed him, carrying ammunition he was too small to use. The boy's name was Pel, and he had lost his parents when their world fell. He had attached himself to Vorik, for reasons the old soldier did not understand. "Are we going to die?" Pell asked. Vorik stopped walking. He looked down at the boy with his 4 eyes. He thought about lying. He thought about saying something hopeful. "Probably," he said instead. "But we are going to make them remember us. That is all anyone can do." The boy nodded slowly. He did not cry. He had already done all his crying months ago. In the command center, Trill was staring at her console with a strange expression. Her feathers stood up straight on her head. Her hands trembled over the controls. "Ambassador," she whispered. Then louder. "Ambassador." Yethal turned. "What is it?" "I am detecting something. At the edge of the system. Gravitational disturbance. More Dominion ships? No, this is different. The readings do not make sense." Other officers gathered around Trill Station. The sensors showed something impossible. Space itself seemed to be shaking at 17 different points. The energy signatures were wrong. They were too strong, too concentrated, too angry to be normal ship drives. "What is that?" someone asked. "I do not know," Trill said. "They are not using standard slip space. They are tearing through reality." On the Dominion flagship, alarms began to sound. Korak stood from his chair, his armored plates clicking together in surprise. His sensor officers were shouting readings that made no sense. "Explain," he demanded. "Unknown contacts, Commander. 17 sources. They are emerging from some kind of non-standard dimensional breach." "Non-standard? What does that mean?" "It means we have never seen anything like this before." The bridge view screen flickered as sensors struggled to track the anomaly. Then, one by one, 17 points of light appeared at the edge of the system. They burned like small stars, and from each one emerged a ship. The ships were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were brutal, angular things, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. They looked like they had been built by someone who expected the universe to be hostile and had decided to be hostile right back. Korak stared at the display. "Identify those vessels." His officer worked the controls. Then he went very still. "Commander, they are human ships." "Human? That is impossible. The humans have been silent for decades. These are definitely human designs. Our database has partial matches. But Commander, these ships are much larger than anything in our records. Much more heavily armed. On the lead vessel, a massive carrier called the UNS Perseverance, Commander Elena Vance studied her tactical display with calm eyes. She was 63 years old, with silver hair cut short and a face marked by decades of service. Her grandmother had died at Proxima, along with her grandfather and 2 aunts. She had joined the Navy at 18. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. "All ships, report status," she said. "Vendetta ready. Consequence ready. Remember Proxima ready. 16 destroyers and the carrier Perseverance. 17 ships against 17 Dominion dreadnoughts." The numbers looked even, but Vance knew better. The Dominion had no idea what they were facing. No one did. Humanity had been building in the darkness for 30 years. "Open a channel," Vance ordered. "All frequencies." Her communications officer nodded. "Channel open, Commander." Vance spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the system to every ship and every station. "Valanthos Station, this is the UNS Perseverance. We heard you. Hold fast. We are coming through." In the command center, Trill played the message again. And again. She was crying. Half the officers were crying. Yethal simply stood there, her hearts pounding so hard she could hear them in her ears. The humans had come. After 30 years of silence, after being abandoned by the galaxy, the humans had come. Korax broadcast his own message. "Unknown vessels, you have entered Dominion operational space. Withdraw immediately or you will be fired upon." There was a pause. Then Commander Vance responded, her voice as cold as the void between stars. "You have threatened civilians under our protection. You have exactly 90 seconds to begin retreat. After that, we stop asking. This is not your concern," Korax shouted. "These refugees belong to the Dominion. The Council has no jurisdiction here, and neither do you." "We are not the Council," Vance replied. "And we did not come here to negotiate." The 90 seconds ticked by. The human fleet continued its approach. Korax waited for them to stop, to talk, to make demands like every other species. They did not. They just kept coming. At the 89th second, Korax gave an order that would end his life. All ships, open fire. The Dominion fleet unleashed everything it had. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space toward the human vessels. Korax smiled. No one could survive that kind of firepower. Then the human ships returned fire. And the universe learned why humanity had been silent for so long. They had not been hiding. They had been preparing. The galaxy had forgotten what humans looked like when they fought. 30 years ago, they had been new to the stars. Young. Hopeful. They had believed in peace and diplomacy. They had trusted their allies. They had died in millions when those allies did not come. The humans who emerged from the void that day were different. They had taken their grief and their rage and their stubborn refusal to give up, and they had built something terrible. Something necessary. The Dominion's first volley filled space with light. Hundreds of weapons fired at once. Energy beams that could cut through battleship armor. Missiles designed to shatter whole stations. Everything the Dominion had, thrown at the human fleet in one overwhelming strike. It was not enough. The human destroyers moved like predators, smooth and fast. They did not fly in neat formations like other species. They spread out, creating overlapping fields of fire. Point defense systems shot down missiles before they got close. Energy shields flickered but held. Then the humans fired back. The first Dominion dreadnought died in less than 3 seconds. A focused beam from the Perseverance punched through its shields like they were made of paper. The beam continued through the ship from front to back, splitting it into 2 burning pieces. Korax watched in horror as his tactical display lit up with warnings. How is this possible? His officers had no answers. They had never seen weapons like this. The human destroyers were launching kinetic rounds at impossible speeds. Metal slugs accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Each impact tore through Dominion armor and out the other side, leaving holes big enough to fly a shuttle through. All ships, focus fire on the carrier, Korax ordered. 8 Dominion dreadnoughts turned their weapons on the Perseverance. The massive human ship took hit after hit. Its shields flared bright enough to blind sensors, and still it kept coming. From the Perseverance's launch bays, fighter wings screamed into space. Small, fast, and deadly. They moved in perfect coordination, communicating faster than any Dominion pilot could react. Where one fighter went, others followed, creating patterns of destruction that no single ship could escape. They are too fast, a Dominion officer shouted. We cannot track them. Then fire at everything, Korax screamed, but firing at everything meant hitting nothing. The human fighters danced between energy beams, always one step ahead. They targeted weapon systems and engines with surgical precision. Within minutes, 3 more Dominion ships were drifting dead in space. On the Perseverance's bridge, Commander Vance watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. She took no joy in killing. She took no pleasure in destruction. But she had made a promise, long ago, standing at her grandmother's memorial. She had promised that the next time someone screamed for help, humanity would answer. Status report, she said. Enemy fleet is down to 12 operational ships, Commander. Our casualties are minimal. Minor damage to Consequence and Vendetta. No personnel lost. 12 ships left. The battle had been going for 4 minutes. Keep pushing, Vance ordered. I want them running or dead in the next 7 minutes. On Valanthos Station, the refugees watched the battle through every viewport and screen they could find. They saw the Dominion fleet, which had seemed so unstoppable, being torn apart by ships from a species most of them had never heard of. Yethal stood in the command center, tears running down her scaled face. She had given up hope. She had recorded her final message. She had prepared herself for death or worse. Now she was watching the impossible. They came, she whispered. They actually came. In the cargo bay, Vorik the mercenary lowered his improvised weapon. The Morvani boy, Pel, stood beside him, mouth hanging open as they watched the battle on a cracked screen. Who are they? Pel asked. Humans, Vorik said slowly. I thought they were extinct, or hiding, or broken. They do not look broken. No, they did not. Back in the battle, Korax made his last stand. His flagship was damaged but still fighting. He had lost 10 ships in 7 minutes. 7 minutes. He had expected an easy victory, a simple collection of helpless refugees. Instead, he had found wolves. Signal the fleet, he gasped. All ships withdraw. Get us out of here. But the humans were not done. The destroyer, remember Proxima, cut off his escape route, its weapons charging for another devastating volley. Korak saw death coming for him and felt something he had never felt before. Fear. "This is impossible," he said. "No species fights like this for strangers. No one sacrifices their own people for refugees they have never met. It goes against nature. It goes against everything." His sensor officer looked up from his console. "Commander, they are not fighting like soldiers defending allies. They are fighting like what? Like we attacked their own children." The final shot hit Korax's flagship directly on the command deck. His last thought, before the fire took him, was a question he would never have answered. What kind of species were these humans? The battle ended 11 minutes after it began. 8 Dominion dreadnoughts destroyed. 5 more crippled and drifting. 4 ships managed to escape into slipspace, but they would carry the story of what happened here. They would spread fear. The human fleet moved into a protective formation around Valanthos Station. The destroyers took up patrol positions, their weapons still hot, watching for any sign of a second attack. The Perseverance positioned itself directly between the station and the open void. Commander Vance opened a channel to the station. "Valanthos Station, your skies are clear. Medical ships are on their way. They will arrive within the hour. How can we help?" In the command center, no one moved. The question hung in the air, so simple and so shocking that no one knew how to answer. How can we help? After everything that had happened, after the galaxy turned its back, someone was asking how they could help. Trill found her voice first. "We have wounded, many wounded, and we are low on food and medicine." "Understood. We are sending supply shuttles now. Our doctors will be on board. They have studied your species' medical needs. Tell your people to hang on just a little longer." Yethal took the communicator with shaking hands. "Commander Vance, I am Ambassador Yethal. I do not know how to thank you. I do not know why you came, but thank you. Thank you for saving us." There was a pause. When Vance spoke again, her voice was softer. "You sent a signal, Ambassador. We heard it. That is what we do now. That is who we are. But why? After what the galaxy did to your people, after Proxima, why would you help anyone?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Come to my ship, Ambassador. When you are ready. We have a lot to talk about, and I think you deserve an answer to that question." The channel closed. Around the station, people were crying and laughing and holding each other. They had been certain they were going to die. Now they were alive, protected by strangers from the other side of the galaxy. Vorik put his weapon down and sat heavily on a cargo crate. Pell sat beside him. "I do not understand," Vorik said. "I have fought for many species. I have never seen anyone do what they just did. They did not know us. They had no reason to help." Pell looked at the old mercenary with the simple wisdom of a child. Maybe they did not need a reason. Maybe they just thought it was the right thing to do. Vorik stared at the boy for a long moment. Then he laughed, a rough and broken sound. "If that is true, little one, then maybe there is hope for this galaxy after all." Outside the station windows, human ships kept watch. They had come from the void, from decades of silence, from a grief that had nearly destroyed them. They had come because someone needed help, and they had arrived just in time. The first human medical ships arrived exactly when Commander Vance had promised. They were smaller than the warships, painted white with red symbols that meant healing and human culture. They docked with Valanthos Station gently, carefully, like they were afraid of causing more damage. When the doors opened, the refugees saw their first humans up close. They were strange creatures, tall and soft-looking, with no scales or armor or natural weapons. They had pale skin and dark skin and every shade between. They had hair on their heads and faces. They walked on 2 legs, balanced in a way that seemed almost fragile. But their eyes were not fragile. Their eyes held something hard, something forged in fire. These were people who had suffered. These were people who had decided that suffering would never make them cruel. The human doctors spread through the station with surprising speed. They carried medical equipment designed for species they had never met. Some of it worked perfectly. Some of it needed adjustment. When something did not work, the humans did not give up. They asked questions. They learned. They found new solutions. A human nurse knelt beside a wounded Morvani child, studying the strange biology with focused attention. The child's 4 arms had been crushed when a ceiling collapsed. The nurse did not panic. She consulted a database, talked quietly with the station's overworked doctors, and figured out how to help. "This is going to hurt a little," she told the child in a translator's flat voice. "But then it will feel better, I promise." The child looked at her with frightened eyes. "Are you going to eat me?" The nurse blinked in surprise. Then she laughed, a warm sound that seemed completely out of place in the ruined station. "No, sweetheart. I am not going to eat you. I am going to fix your arms so you can hug your mother again. Is that okay?" The child nodded slowly. The nurse got to work. In the cargo bays, human soldiers unloaded supplies, food packages designed for a dozen different species, water purification systems, power generators, medical supplies that the station had run out of weeks ago. The soldiers worked quickly and efficiently, asking the refugees where things should go, treating everyone with careful respect. Vorik the mercenary watched them with confusion that slowly turned into something like wonder. He had worked with soldiers from many species. He had never seen anything like this. A human soldier, young and tired-looking, stopped beside him. "You are the one who organized the defense, right? The cargo bay barriers?" "I am," Vorik said carefully. "It would not have stopped them for long. Maybe not. But you tried. That matters." The soldier held out a package. "Food. Real food. Not emergency rations. We brought extra for the people who were ready to fight." Vorik took the package slowly. "Why are you doing this? All of this?" The soldier shrugged, as if the answer was obvious. "Because you needed help." "Is there another reason?" Before Vorik could answer, the soldier moved on to the next task. There was always another task. The humans never seemed to stop. Ambassador Yethal took a shuttle to the Perseverance. She was nervous in ways she had not felt since her first diplomatic mission decades ago. These humans had saved her people. They had killed an entire enemy fleet for strangers. She did not know what to expect from them. The Perseverance was massive inside, built for war but somehow still feeling alive. Human crew members hurried through corridors on urgent business. They nodded politely at Yethal as they passed. Some even smiled. She was taken to a room near the top of the ship. It had wide windows that looked out at the stars. Commander Vance was waiting for her, sitting at a simple table with 2 cups of steaming liquid. "Ambassador, please, sit down. This is tea. It is a drink from our homeworld. You do not have to try it if you prefer not to." Yethal sat. She looked at Vance, trying to read this strange creature who had done the impossible. "I recorded a message," Yethal said, "before you came. A final message to the council, condemning them for abandoning us. I was certain we were going to die. You almost did. We almost did not make it in time. But you came. That is what I do not understand. You came." Vance was quiet for a moment. She looked out at the stars with eyes that had seen too much. 30 years ago, she said slowly, my grandmother lived on a colony called New Geneva. It was a beautiful world. Peaceful. They thought they were safe because they had treaties and allies and all the protections of galactic civilization. Yethal said nothing. She already knew this story would not have a happy ending. Raiders attacked without warning. My grandmother sent distress calls to everyone. The Council, the Morvani, the Silthine, everyone who had promised to help humanity in times of need. She sent messages for 3 weeks, while the raiders killed everyone they could find. Vance's voice stayed steady, but her hands tightened around her cup. No one came. The Council debated jurisdiction. The Morvani said they could not spare ships. Everyone had an excuse. My grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, my little cousin who was only 4 years old. They all died waiting for help that never arrived. I am sorry, Yethal whispered. I am so sorry. When it was over, humanity had a choice. We could become bitter. We could decide that if no one would save us, we would never save anyone else. We could harden our hearts and look only to our own survival, like everyone else in the galaxy. Vance turned to face Yethal directly. But that is not who we are. We did not withdraw from the galaxy because we stopped caring. We withdrew because we needed time. Time to grieve. Time to rebuild. Time to become strong enough that the next time someone screamed for help into the void, there would be someone there to answer. You spent 30 years preparing for this? We spent 30 years building ships and training soldiers and watching the galaxy. Waiting. We knew that someday, somewhere, someone would need help and no one would come. We wanted to be the ones who came. Yethal felt tears running down her scales again. The galaxy abandoned you. We let your people die. How can you not hate us? Vance smiled, but it was a sad smile. Some of us did hate, for a while. But hatred is a poison, Ambassador. It eats you from the inside. We decided that we would rather be the people we wished existed than the people we had learned to expect. She reached across the table and touched Yethal's hand gently. Your signal reached us. It was just a few words, a plea for help from people who did not expect anyone to listen. But we heard it. We hear every signal like that. And we always answer. Always. Always. Word of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. News networks that were carefully controlled by council interests tried to spin the story. They called the humans aggressive, unpredictable, dangerous. They warned that humanity's return threatened galactic stability, but the truth leaked out anyway. Video from the station showed human doctors saving alien children. Reports described human soldiers sharing their own food with hungry refugees. Messages from the survivors talked about strangers who had crossed the galaxy to help people they had never met. On 100 worlds, species who had forgotten about humanity began to remember, and they began to wonder what else they had gotten wrong. On Valanthos Station, the refugees slowly began to heal. The station's lights stopped flickering. The power systems worked again. There was food and medicine and hope, and standing guard in the darkness outside, human warships kept watch. They had come from silence to save strangers. Now they would stay until the strangers were safe. It was what humans did. It was who they were. The Dominion hegemony was not used to losing. When the 4 surviving ships limped back to their home space, their commanders brought news that shook the entire empire. An unknown force had destroyed their fleet in minutes. The humans, a species everyone thought was broken and forgotten, had returned. Dominion leaders demanded answers from the Galactic Council. They wanted the humans punished, sanctioned, crushed. They insisted that humanity had violated a dozen treaties and committed acts of war. The council met in emergency session. Representatives from 100 species debated for days. Some agreed with the Dominion. Humanity was dangerous. They had shown military power beyond anything the galaxy expected. They should be contained before they became a threat to everyone. But something strange happened. Other voices spoke up. Smaller species who had watched the events at Valanthos with growing amazement. They asked uncomfortable questions. Why had the council done nothing while 400,000 refugees faced death? Why had humanity, a species with every reason to hate the galaxy, been the only ones to help? The debates went nowhere. The council was too divided, too corrupt, too used to doing nothing. In the end, they passed a resolution expressing concern about humanity's actions but taking no real steps. It was what the council always did. What they could not stop was the change happening across the galaxy. On Valanthos Station, the refugees were given choices. Council member worlds offered resettlement options, carefully worded invitations to carefully controlled destinations. Many refugees accepted, grateful for any path to a new life. But many others made a different choice. They asked to go with the humans. It started slowly. A few families at first, then more. Morvani and Kethari and Silthine and a dozen other species approached the human ships and asked if there was a place for them in human space. They wanted to live among the people who had come for them when no one else would. Commander Vance brought the requests to her superiors back on Earth. The answer came quickly. Yes. Anyone who wanted to come was welcome. Humanity had plenty of room and plenty of work and plenty of need for friends who understood what they stood for. Ambassador Yethal made her own choice. She resigned from the Council Diplomatic Corps. 40 years of service ended with a simple message that she felt no need to explain. She had spent her life believing in institutions that failed when they were needed most. She accepted a new position, liaison between humanity and the species they had saved. She would help build bridges between worlds. She would help spread the truth about what had happened at Valanthos. Before she left the station for the last time, she gave a speech. It was broadcast across the system, and from there it spread to every corner of the galaxy. I spent my career believing that civilization required compromise, she said. I believed we must accept the limitations of what is possible. I believed that when things were hard, we had to be practical, careful, limited in our hopes. She paused, looking at the human ships visible through the station windows. The humans taught me something different. They taught me that the impossible is just the possible that no one has tried yet. They showed me that strength and kindness are not opposites. They proved that you can choose to be the people you wish existed. Even when the universe gives you every reason to be hard and cold and selfish. She smiled, her scales bright again for the first time in months. I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of what they did for us. I hope some of you will join me. 6 months later, Commander Vance addressed the Galactic Council by holographic link. She had been ordered to explain humanity's actions and intentions. She had been warned that the Dominion and their allies would demand punishment and restrictions. She did not seem worried. 30 years ago, she began. Humanity asked for help and received silence. We have spent those years becoming the answer we never got. We built ships, we trained soldiers, we watched and waited for the moment we could be what we needed, and no one was. Council representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. We are not rejoining the Council. We do not want your treaties or your recognition. We are simply serving notice to every species in this galaxy. She leaned forward, her eyes steady. If any species anywhere sends a distress call, we will hear it, and we will come. Not because we expect gratitude, not because we want power, because it is right, because someone should, because we remember what it felt like to scream into the void and hear nothing back. She straightened. So this is humanity's promise to the galaxy. You are not alone. You never were. And now, neither are we. The transmission ended. The Council erupted in argument. But across the galaxy, in places where the desperate hid and hoped, the message spread. 1 year later, a small transport ship drifted in space far from any Council territory. It carried 300 Morvani refugees, fleeing a border conflict. Pirates had found them. 4 hostile ships surrounded the transport, demanding surrender. The transport captain, an old Morvani woman who had seen too much death in her life, made a decision. She activated an old emergency frequency that she had programmed into her communication system months ago. She had never really believed it would work. She had simply wanted something to hope for. This is transport vessel Gentle Dawn. We are under attack by pirates. We have 300 civilians on board, including children. Please, if anyone can hear this, please help us. The message went out. The pirates laughed. They began cutting through the transport's hull. 3 minutes later, space tore open. A human destroyer dropped out of the void, its weapons already charging. The ship was sleek and deadly, its hull marked with scars from old battles. Its name was painted on the side in stark white letters. We heard you. The pirates took one look at the human warship and ran. They did not even try to fight. They had heard the stories. They knew what happened to those who hurt people under human protection. The destroyer moved alongside the transport. A calm voice came through the communications channel. Gentle Dawn, this is the UNS. We heard you. Your skies are clear. Do you need medical assistance or supplies? We are here to help. The old Morvani captain stared at her console for a long moment. Then she began to laugh and cry at the same time. In the passenger section, a young Morvani child pressed her face against the window, looking at the human ship with wonder. Mother, she said. Who are they? Where did they come from? Her mother held her close and smiled through her tears. They are humans, little one. They come from far away. They come to help people in trouble. Why? Because that is what they do. When someone needs help, they come. The child thought about this for a moment. Then she smiled too. I like them, she said. Her mother nodded. So do I, little one. So do I. Across the galaxy, in dark places and desperate situations, the word continued to spread. It passed from ship to ship, from station to station, from world to world. It became a legend, then a hope, then a promise. The humans were back. They were watching. They were listening. And if you needed them, if you were alone and afraid and certain that no one cared, all you had to do was send the signal. They would come. They would always come.